Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Future of Digital Fabrication and Maker Education workshop session at FabX Live. My name is Stephanie Santoso, and I'm the Director of Maker Initiatives at Citizen Schools Makers and Mentors Network. And I'm joined here with my co-facilitators, Sonia Pryor-Jones, who's the Chief Implementation Officer of Fab Foundation, Maria Romero, who's the Maker Learning Program Director at Digital Promise, and Paula Blickstein, who's an associate professor at Columbia University and is the director of the Transformative Learning Technologies Lab and the Global FabLearn program. So I'm really excited about the discussion that we're going to have today. We really want this to be an opportunity for everyone here to help shape the future of digital fabrication and maker education. And there are so many facets and dimensions to this topic. We know it's a really broad topic, and of course we've been exploring this topic in different sessions and workshops throughout the week. And so we're really hoping that this is an opportunity to build upon those conversations, and then also to start to talk about actionable steps that we can take to turn the future we want to see into reality. So we're going to kick things off by hearing from Sonia, who's going to talk a little bit more about the Field Building Collaborative, which is a joint effort by six organizations, including our organizations, to create a shared vision and strategy around digital fabrication education and maker education. And we want to give everybody an opportunity who's participating today to have their voices heard. So what we're going to do is to have the first part of our workshop be breakout group discussions that will be really driven by four big questions around digital fabrication and maker education. Each of us, myself, Maria, Sonia, and Paolo, will be facilitating one of those breakout groups. And then we're going to regroup after that, and we're actually going to, rather than doing sort of the traditional share out that we would normally have with breakout groups, we're actually going to share out but focus on talking more about the things that we wish we would have known when we first got involved in this field, and advice that we could give to others for trying to grow what they're doing around digital fabrication and maker education. So these are the four breakout group questions. I wanted to share them here just so you have an opportunity to have a look at them and then think about which breakout group you would like to be a part of. And then Maria is going to walk us through a little bit later in the session how you can select your breakout group. We're going to ask you to rename yourself through Zoom and put the letter of the breakout group that you would like to be a part of in front. But Maria will walk us through if you haven't had a chance to do that before in Zoom. So the four breakout group questions are, A is, when it comes to developing a value proposition and justification for digital fabrication and maker education, what has really resonated with your organization and the stakeholders you work with? B is, how are you continuing to offer digital fabrication and maker education experiences remotely in the face of COVID-19? C is, how have unexpected partnerships or cross-sector collaborations been helpful in growing what you're doing in digital fabrication and maker education? And D is, how might the work of the Field Collaborative create a shared vision and actions that best include the insights and goals of Fab Labs, maker spaces, schools, and learning communities that we both represent and intend to serve? So I'm going to turn it over to Sonia to provide a little bit more context for our conversation today and to talk a little bit more about the Field Building Collaborative.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. It's good to be with you this afternoon. As we make our way towards the end of FabX Live, it's been an amazing week. Just to share a little bit of background about the Field Building Collaborative, this is a new effort and it's got a short history, so there's plenty opportunity for others to join us. But this collaborative started about a year ago when I started to talk to leaders at the different organizations from Nation of Makers, Digital Promise, Maker Ed, Makers and Mentors Network and FabLearn about the work that we have been doing collectively, but not always together. And it was our thinking that we could be far more meaningful and effective in our work if we started to think about it as a field instead of just individual education initiatives and projects. So we started meeting and discussing what that might look like together. We launched our first formal meeting in June of 2019 during the NOMCON conference hosted by the Nation of Makers. We then followed up with another meeting in Pittsburgh at the Maker Ed convening. And at that time, we decided that we had a couple of high-level themes that kept reoccurring in our conversations as we thought about what we might be able to do together to create a vision, but also to push all of our work forward. And those high-level themes were around advocacy, adoption, equity, quality, and sustainability. That then led us into a discussion about how we might even sustain our own efforts to work together, because we all are relatively small nonprofits, and decided that we would pursue some funding. And we did that through the NSF Includes proposal opportunity. And this summer, earlier this year, we did receive an NSF Includes planning grant, which really focuses on broadening participation, which really set well with our 5 large themes that we were thinking about. So our specific planning grant is called Exploring a Collaborative Model for Broadening Participation in STEM through Digital Fabrication and Making. And what we're doing right now over the next couple of months is really focused in 2 focus areas of the grant, one around shared vision, the other around leadership and communication. And really your conversation with us today is going to help seed a lot of the direction that we're taking. So it's really exciting to do all of this with you all, and we're happy to talk about this with you in our breakout sessions. So thanks, Steph.
Thanks so much, Sonia. And now I'm going to turn it over to Maria to talk through a little bit more about the logistics, norms, and then how we get into our breakout groups.
Thanks, Stephanie. So we just put together a couple of norms to guide our conversations. The first is step up, then step back. I'd like to reframe this one. I didn't have a chance to in the slideshow, but we often hear this norm, step up, then step back. I also like to think of it as step up and step up. Step up to share if you don't often share. Step up to listen as well. Our second norm is putting ideas on the table. We encourage folks to share and bring their ideas to the conversations and discussions we're going to lead. And the third is together we know a lot. So we really want to recognize the knowledge and expertise and experiences of everyone in our group, and just know that maybe we don't have answers, but together collectively we do have a lot of knowledge and experience. And then a couple of logistics as we're in breakout discussions. It's really helpful if folks can mute when they're not actively speaking. It just helps to reduce background noise so we can all hear each other. We encourage folks to share their thoughts in the chat window. If in case somebody is speaking and you want to offer something else, we encourage chat as one way to add on to the conversation. We also ask that you keep topics related to teaching and learning at the center of discussions. Yeah, so these are the breakout group questions again. I think, Stephanie, if you go to the next slide, I have them as well. So Stephanie had mentioned earlier about how we were going to pick out our breakout groups. So in Zoom, you have the option to rename yourself. And each group has a letter corresponding with the question. If, for example, if you'd like to be in group A, we'll ask that you put the letter A at the very beginning of your name. That's super helpful for the host who's going to be organizing us into breakout rooms. And so the way that you can do this is by opening the participants tab at the very bottom of your Zoom window. And you can rename yourself by choosing the rename option, which is under more. So I'm just going to give folks a few seconds to do that. So again, you'll just go to participants, you'll hover over your own name and find the option more. And then you'll be able to rename yourself, and you're going to add the group that you would like to be in at the very beginning of your name. And then we'll be able to organize folks into breakout groups.
And then while we're waiting, I'm wondering if, I know Lydia, you're helping us to moderate the chat. I'm not sure if there are any interesting comments or questions that folks have, or if others have thoughts or things that they want to share while we're waiting to be transported magically to our breakout groups.
Sure. There's nothing in there as of right now, but I'm going to start assigning.
For folks who've joined other sessions in the K-12 track, I'm curious what sessions you found interesting, or if there was something in a particular session that you found really interesting, or something that you learned that you hadn't heard of before. Everyone's so quiet.
There is one question in the chat. If you could share who is going to moderate each question, each group between
Sure.
A and D.
A is the question A, Paolo is going to moderate. Question B is going to be moderated by Maria. Question C is going to be moderated by me. And question D is going to be moderated by Sonia. And I would add here too that we've got a notes document that we have a notes template that we have for each of the breakout groups. And I think, I can't remember, Maria, if you already dropped it into the chat box, but we'd love for each of you to contribute to the notes document for your breakout group as you're participating in your discussions. So we're gonna hopefully take a crowdsourced, community-driven effort towards collecting the notes. But what we're hoping is that if you drop your contact info in the notes document, there's a spot for it under participants. We will send you all a nicely summarized document that has the discussion and takeaways from each of the breakout groups, even if you're not able to participate in the other, the discussions for the other 3 groups.
And just to give Lydia a little time to continue what she's doing, we also have a few notes here. Corey mentioned that it was neat to hear how people are responding to COVID across the board. And Teresa mentioned that she loved what was happening with the Scopes DF project. So thank you guys for those comments.
There are quite a few people who haven't selected a group. I can randomly assign those if that helps, so we can start the breakout group discussion.
Yep, maybe we can give folks like 30 more seconds, and then we can, if you haven't renamed yourself, you will be magically transported to the group. It'll be a surprise. Thanks, Lydia.
No problem.
Yeah, it has been inspiring to hear how everyone has been so innovative in terms of pivoting in response to COVID-19, just in terms of the way that they're really thinking about providing these digital fabrication and maker education experiences, which is why we had a question dedicated to that, because I know that was a topic, a session all its own earlier earlier in the conference. So hopefully some of that will build off of that previous conversation. I really liked the session on digital badges that took place earlier this week. It really got me thinking about just the ways that you can better incorporate those or more effectively incorporate those into certifications. And yeah, it was really interesting too, just because the presenters had such a broad range of examples, both here in the US where I am, but also internationally across different sectors. So that was really, really interesting.
All right, we are good to go. If no one specified a letter, a group number, then I assign them so I can open all rooms if everyone is ready.
Great. Transport is Lydia, and we'll get a 5-minute warning when we have 5 minutes left in our breakout groups.
Sure. All right. Yes.
Hey, Sarah.
Hey.
Et voila.
Hi, Sherry.
Stephanie, I think you're on mute. I can see you.
Oh, sorry. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our large group discussion. Sorry about that. Hopefully you had some really rich conversation in your breakout groups. And what we're going to do, instead of the traditional share out of sort of like key takeaways from each of the breakout groups, we as co-facilitators are going to take the notes that were compiled for each of the breakout groups, and we're going to email you all a really nicely curated summary of the conversations. But what we thought would be maybe a little more fruitful is to actually have a large group discussion around this question that you see here, which I think we don't always have opportunity to get together as thought leaders in this space. And so we thought it would just, when we were talking about this session and planning this session, one of the things that I always thought would be really, really interesting is to collect pieces of advice and things that we wish we thought we had known when we were first getting started in digital fabrication education and maker education. So this large group discussion is designed to kind of facilitate that conversation. But I'm going to turn it over to Maria, and she's going to help us walk us through this.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. I'm going to share my screen now. And so can folks see my screen okay? Is that showing up for everyone? So at the very top of this screen, there is a website, menti.com, and there is a code, and I'm happy to drop the code in the chat as well. But this is one way that we thought would be really neat to source everyone's pieces of advice. You can also access this on your phone if that's a little bit easier, but you would just go to menti.com and use the code 229529. Thank you, Leanne, for dropping in that code. I was having a hard time finding the chat with my screen share open. So we have some things coming up from the group. Find a supportive group of makers, listen to multiple stakeholders. I just want to invite, if this was your advice, if you wanted to share a little bit more, but also if this isn't your advice, but this resonates with you, and I would love to hear what's coming up for you as you see this, see some of these pieces come up.
I was the one who put in find a supportive group of makers. I'm in maker education with middle school making, and it's been really helpful to find people who just enjoy making both in our community and at our local university, because after you've taught a lot, it helps to also feed that maker part of your soul too.
Thank you, Teresa, for sharing that. And I'm seeing some more responses come up. One that's also standing out to me is don't forget to play. And so I'd love to just hear some more thoughts on around that piece of advice as well.
That was me, Rebecca. I've been noticing from just seeing people who are starting their spaces and what the use is for, and just the thought that, at the end of the day, these spaces are for anyone of all ages to learn and to have fun learning. And I think that maker spaces and digital fabrication labs really bring that out in everyone, and playing and having fun gets to us learning about the things we want to grow in. So that's why I put that there.
Thanks, Rebecca. And I saw another note, and so things are starting to flow, so I'm starting to lose track of them a little bit, but there was one that said that talked about giving yourself grace to learn. So I'm wondering if anybody wanted to expand on that one as well.
That was me, Maria. And I just think the grace to learn is not only related to the technology, but also the culture, also the how-to in terms of making sure that your space is as meaningful as possible for the community you want to serve, that it's also inclusive, and just understanding that all of those things take time and attention.
Thank you, Sonia. So there's lots of great things in here. I just want to create some space to invite folks to share out their own advice, but happy to also share some ones that are really sticking out to me as well.
Rebecca asks if these pieces of advice will be shared somewhere.
Yes, we'll be able to export the Menti question and have all of the answers included in the summarized notes. So another piece of advice that's standing out to me is around, I think the person phrased it as like visibility and sharing your successes and sharing your stories. So interested if whoever shared that would like to expand upon it. Also, what are some good ways to share your story? Some good examples of that as well. I think one way to share stories that is standing out to me in the session that we just had. So our breakout discussion for Group B was all around approaches to maker learning and digital fabrication now in times of COVID. And so I thought that was one way that I was hearing stories from all over the country and internationally about how we're adapting program offerings to really fit the needs and context of the youth that we serve. And so I thought that was one way that we could continue to amplify our work and learn from one another in terms of the challenges that we're facing and just how we're adapting to meet those challenges. So I'm seeing some more advice pop up. I saw one piece of advice that said it's about the people, not the machines. So wondering if anybody who shared that piece of advice wanted to expand on that as well.
Sure, I put that one in. I think it's digital fabrication or maker education. It can get very easy to. I mean, I find it very easy to just like focus on learning how to do the machine or buy the next machine or plan for where it's going to go in the shop or whatever. And I have to remind myself to be thinking always about the people, thinking about the learners. Our group was talking about the value propositions for stakeholders. And there were all kinds of stakeholders, the funders, other educators that we're collaborating with, the learners themselves. So it's just, if I could give myself a piece of advice, it would be to build those relationships in those communities. And I'd second whoever said build relationships with other people teaching or making, or teaching making.
Thank you. Yeah, I've seen a couple of pieces of advice come up about who your stakeholders are, who your community is, and I think that's a big question too. And now when we're all moving towards more remote experiences, is building community in a virtual environment, and what are some best practices and ways to do that as well.
I like this one about every person in the room is a learner and a teacher. I think that's one that comes up a lot, you know, in conversation, and like a best practice that like everyone strives for, but it's hard. Like, I'm curious if you all have like examples of how you've done that in practice. Like, how have you actually like fostered an environment that really does like create a way for everyone to, you know, to be both a learner and a teacher?
That was mine, Stephanie, and the story that comes to mind is just that the first time my 3D printer broke, I had a 12-year-old take it apart and then show me what he did to fix it. And so it's really humbling, but you know, I just took any fear out of it for him or for me. I'm like, well, it's already broken, so it can't get worse. And I think it's just stuff like that, you know, okay, show me how you did that. And that's all the time with young people, is they're learning alongside us. And I think to just kind of be humble about it and remind yourself and them that sometimes your knowledge is kind of at the same point is a huge thing in this world. And it's always going to be that way. We're no longer the keeper of all the answers or all the right answers.
Yeah, no, that's a really great example. Thanks for sharing this. Yeah, Sonia says, students need those leadership opportunities. It also loosens the pressure that everyone has to know everything. That's so true.
Yeah, I love that. I was going to say to Mess that your example reminded me, we recently had the opportunity to connect with more educators through an ed camp that we hosted, and many of the educators were sharing with us that once they moved to distance learning, a lot of the tools that they were using, their students knew way more about the tools than they did, and they were looking to their students for the expertise on like how to kind of manage this transition into distance learning.
I want to say I hosted a Scratch Ed meetup a few years ago, and this brilliant teacher came in and she said to me 4 times, well, I don't have a computer science degree. And I just kept saying, nobody cares, you know, like, nobody cares. You can teach this. Have you learned it? Do you have any understanding? Do you know how to get to it? Do you know how to bring a student to it? That's good enough. And so I think that's a big thing in this world that we have to get past because of how fast this is moving. Like, nobody's going to be an expert in it when they start teaching it. Or if you have, then you're too late anyway.
So we also had some similar experiences with the leadership thing. So last year, like, we are organizing a mobile event, like basically in like different districts of my place. So we around like 15 places. So did a program called we did a program called like Youth Lead Program inside that event, where we selected like 30 volunteers from student community, and we taught them the activities beforehand, like, so, and on the day of the event, so these kids were like doing the part of the mentoring for the other students. We were there to just guide them, and like they were taking the lead in most of the delivery thing. So, and that was a very fun thing, and like yeah, students get a lot of confidence, like being given the responsibility. Like normally teacher don't want to give a responsibility to the student because they think that they will they will mess things up. But yeah, giving them the responsibility, like it changes it changes the way the students behave, and like and also like develop their overall confidence.
That's a really great point. Thanks so much for sharing, like, just this idea that, like, if you really show students that you believe in them, that they will, of course, they will, you know, maybe not always, but like in many cases, rise to the occasion, right? And in a lot of cases, like completely like go beyond what you could have imagined they could accomplish, right? I think that's a great example. Jeffrey, I think you had your hand raised, so I wanted to just call on you and see if you had something that you wanted to share. You can, I think you can unmute yourself, but I can also unmute you if you're having trouble.
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Hi. I'm here from Malawi, and I don't have much to offer in terms of experience yet from a makerspace learning center, which is what I'm trying to build here in Malawi. But what I actually wanted to share as a comment to some of the comments recently made, I have my ear on another session going on, and one of the things just that came up struck me. It was forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light comes in. And I thought it was an interesting quote. I don't know where it's from, but it's you know, I'm really happy to you know, be part of this this particular session and many others, because I'm just starting out here, and it's a very challenging environment for education. So I mean, the general quality of education is poor, and something like a makerspace into the mix is very unique. So I'm very happy to you know, get everyone's insights, because I'm gonna need it. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Jeffrey. I'm curious if it sounds like you've been participating pretty actively in the different sessions during this conference, but wondered if, like, while you have all of us here and many folks that are here have been doing this work for quite some time, if there was anything specific that you wanted to ask, or like help or support that we could provide specifically to your work, since you are trying to seed some work in the community where you're working in Malawi.
Well, that might take hours, because there's so many questions. Perhaps if this, you know, if this group or a subgroup wants to do an offline, well, online, of course, a Zoom session, you know, my understanding is the intention of this FabX Live, it was to, you know, foster more communication, which is great. I mean, I mean, I have to say that I feel like a kid in a candy store. I've been a solo maker for 4 decades, and I've only been part of this greater community just because I happened to end up sitting next to the Fab Foundation's makerspace in the back of in Boston in November on a visit back, and so yes, I have many questions, but I'm thinking I don't want to dominate the conversation. So if people want to reach out to me and offer help, I'd love it. And again, even some of the, you know, the things from Menti, how is that going to be consolidated, and how do we find it? But furthermore, the participants in this particular session, I mean, again, I've seen some of you on several others too. So, you know, any kind of support that you can offer would be great. I mean, we're still in the point of trying to fund more equipment, and but I think in information is just, you know, learning from mistakes, of course, is the biggest one, I think, and just different experience, so that I can start off without making too many, at least to start would be wonderful. So thank you.
Thanks, Jeffrey. I wonder if folks want to specifically, if you wanted to drop your email address in the chat, maybe folks who are interested in learning more about your project could like reach out to you. That might be one opportunity, like one option if you feel comfortable. And then we have just a few minutes here, but wanted to just see, Maria, if there were any last pieces of advice that you saw scrolling through here that you wanted to call out before we look to wrap up. And Jeffrey, I think your other question was like how we would share these pieces of advice with the broader group. So we'll be able to download the responses, and we will we'll share this out along with a summary of the discussions from the breakout group after this conversation. We, since each of you registered for this through Zoom, will be able to email you all a copy of those notes.
Yeah, Stephanie, I was just going to call out a few pieces of advice that were really standing out to me as we close out this session. And I don't have, as things continue to scroll by me, I don't have them all word for word, but there were a few around how fires happen, don't be afraid to make mistakes, and recognizing yourself as a learner. And I thought that those really stood out to me as we kind of move into, and many folks are moving into a new school year, a new program year, and just as we're all kind of transitioning and adapting to our different contexts, I thought that was those were some really helpful pieces of advice.
Great. Thank you so much. I think this sort of wraps us up. We're pretty close to time here. I wanted to thank each of you all for sharing your insights with us on the future of digital fabrication and maker education. I think, you know, this is, of course, just the start of the conversation. And I also wanted to talk a little bit, maybe this is appropriate to Sonia, if you wanted to join in here just to talk about ways that as we continue to work on this NSF Includes grant and work as a field collaborative, opportunities for folks that are in this conversation to potentially join as we're building out the collaborative.
Sure. And so this first round of work, as I mentioned earlier on, is very much focused on the two foci points as it relates to shared vision and leadership and communication. And so you can expect, based on the networks that you're already a part of, to receive communication about what comes out of that. There's going to be a bit of a white paper or manifesto that's being written to share. We also have committed to creating a number of entry points for more people to join the Field Building Collaborative, but we've not figured out quite yet how that's going to function. And so I would encourage everyone, if you're interested in making sure you can stay abreast, to take a look at my email in the chat. And I'm happy to, add you to a list to receive information moving forward.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for joining the conversation, and looking forward to continuing to collaborate with you moving forward.